Horror legends Peter Cushing and Christopher Lee have crossed paths many times during their respective careers. Here is a look at all 24 films the Gruesome Twosome have appeared in. Number 1. Hamlet, 1948. This is the first British production to win the Academy Award for Best Picture. This Laurence Olivier version of Shakespeare's play features Peter Cushing in a supporting role as Osric, a courtier who referees a duel. Christopher Lee appears briefly as an uncredited guard with a spear in the background. Number 2. Moulin Rouge from 1952, a biopic of artist Henri de Toulouse-Lautrec. Christopher Lee plays real-world artist Georges Seurat, while Peter Cushing plays the fictional Marcel de Lavoisier. Number 3. Alexander the Great, 1956. An historical epic featuring Peter Cushing playing Memnon, a Greek military commander and rival to Alexander. Christopher Lee does not physically appear, but his voice does, as Nectanebus, dubbing over Helmut Dantine's physical performance. Number 4. The Curse of Frankenstein, 1957. While this is technically their fourth collaboration, this is the first time they share the screen. This is also Hammer's first color horror film and Peter's first leading role in a film. Loosely based on Mary Shelley's novel, Peter plays Baron Victor Frankenstein, the scientist who brings the creature to life. Christopher Lee is, of course, that creature. This is also the pair's first Hammer film, in which they would appear 8 times together. Number 5. Horror of Dracula, 1958. Loosely based on the Bram Stoker novel, Hammer pairs up our duo again with Peter playing vampire hunter Van Helsing, while Christopher Lee dons the fangs as Count Dracula. Their second Hammer film cemented Cushing and Lee as an iconic horror pairing. Number 6. The Hound of the Baskervilles, 1959. The first color adaptation of Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's classic detective novel, and their third Hammer film. Cushing, of course, plays Sherlock Holmes, while Lee plays Sir Henry Baskerville, heir to the Baskerville fortune. Number 7. The Mummy, 1959. The first film made after Hammer reached an official agreement with Universal Pictures, allowing them to do remakes of their classic horror films. Cushing portrays John Banning, an archaeologist, while Christopher Lee appears as Karras, the mummy. Their fourth Hammer pairing leads to another Hammer franchise, although neither man would appear in any of the sequels. Number 8. The Devil's Agent, 1962. This film tells the story of a double agent in Germany during the Cold War. Christopher Lee appears as Baron von Staub, the agent's friend before the war. Peter Cushing's scenes, however, were cut from the finished film. Nonetheless, they both worked on the film, so it is counted. Number 9. The Gorgon, 1964. A then-modern reimagining of the Greek Medusa myth. The film tells the story of the titular monster terrorizing a village in Europe by turning its inhabitants to stone. Christopher Lee stars as Professor Karl Meister, while Peter Cushing plays Dr. Namaroff in their fifth Hammer film together. Number 10. Dr. Terror's House of Horrors, 1965. The first film in Amicus Productions' famous anthology horror cycle. Peter Cushing stars as the narrator, Dr. Schreck, who guides the audience through 5 different horror stories. The fourth segment, Disembodied Hand, stars Christopher Lee as an art critic named Franklin Marsh, who is haunted by the severed hand of a painter whose life he has destroyed. Number 11. She, 1965. Dr. No's Ursula Andress plays Aisha, the immortal ruler of a lost realm, whose domain is discovered by a group of archaeologists. Christopher Lee plays Aisha's priest, Bilali, while Peter Cushing plays the main archaeologist, Professor Horace L. Holly. This would be the pair's 6th Hammer collaboration. Number 12. The Skull, 1965. Another Amicus production that stars Peter Cushing as Dr. Christopher Maitland, an occult collector who comes into possession of the Marquis de Sade's skull and quickly falls under its sinister spell. Christopher Lee appears as a guest star as Sir Matthew Phillips, the skull's previous owner. Number 13, Island of the Burning Damned, aka Night of the Big Heat, from 1967. A sci-fi flick about a British island that experiences an extreme heat wave in the middle of winter, causing speculation of an alien invasion. Christopher Lee plays the lead as Professor Godfrey Hansen, while Peter Cushing guest stars as Dr. Vernon Stone, aiding Hansen against the aliens. Number 14, Scream and Scream Again, 1970. A gothic horror sci-fi conspiracy thriller from AIP that tells the story of a serial killer whom the police believe to be a vampire. Lee and Cushing appear alongside another horror legend, Vincent Price, although Cushing does not share the screen with either man in the film. All three actors have small roles, with Cushing portraying Major Heinrich Benedict, while Lee portrays a character named Fremont. Number 15, One More Time, 1970. This one tells the story of two nightclub owners who end up on the wrong side of the law and have to work together to prove their innocence and solve a murder. Lee and Cushing cameo as Count Dracula and Baron Frankenstein, in homage to their famous Hammer characters, though their appearances are very brief. Number 16, The House That Dripped Blood, 1970. Another Amicus anthology where Peter Cushing stars in the Waxworks segment as Philip Grayson, a retired stockbroker who stumbles upon a wax museum and becomes obsessed with a statue that resembles his dead lover. Christopher Lee stars in Sweets to the Sweet as John Reed, a widower who moves into a house with his young daughter only to discover that she has supernatural abilities. Number 17, I, Monster, from 1971. This Amicus adaptation of Robert Louis Stevenson's Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde stars Christopher Lee as Dr. Charles Marlowe, a psychologist who invents a drug that turns him into his deranged alter ego, Mr. Edward Blake. Peter Cushing portrays Marlowe's lawyer, Frederick Utterson, who believes that Blake is blackmailing his client before he slowly discovers the true nature of the situation. Number 18, Dracula AD, 1972. This marks the pair's 7th Hammer collaboration and is also the 7th film in the Dracula franchise, with the duo reprising their roles as Dracula and Van Helsing. This movie is set in the then-contemporary 1970s and features a bunch of hippies reviving Dracula, with Van Helsing's studious ancestor hot on the vampire's trail. Number 19, Horror Express, 1972. This horror adventure is set on a moving train with Christopher Lee as Professor Alexander Saxton and Peter Cushing as Dr. Wells, trying to contain an alien threat that possesses various passengers. Sound familiar? This was 10 years before John Carpenter's The Thing and is based on the same novella. Number 20, Nothing But the Night, 1973. The only production of Christopher Lee's Charlemagne films. The film tells the story of Police Inspector Colonel Charles Bingham, played by Christopher Lee, who enlists the help of pathologist Sir Mark Ashley, played by Peter Cushing, to uncover a mystery surrounding the deaths of various orphan trustees. The film is often noted today for its creepy ending. Number 21, The Creeping Flesh, 1973. This one tells the story of Professor Emmanuel Hildern, a Victorian scientist played by Peter Cushing, who returns from Papua New Guinea with a bag of ancient bones. When exposed to water, the bones take on a new life, unleashing a skeletal beast on the scientist and his companions. Christopher Lee plays the scientist's brother, Dr. James Hildern, who runs an asylum and becomes embroiled in the supernatural plot. Number 22, The Satanic Rites of Dracula, 1973. Their final Hammer pairing leaves a bit to be desired as they reprise their roles as Dracula and Van Helsing one last time. The film blends the political thriller genre with supernatural horror as Dracula attempts to bring about Armageddon by unleashing a deadly virus. Number 23, Arabian Adventure, 1979. This one tells the story of an evil sorcerer named Alcazar, played by Christopher Lee, who seeks power by obtaining a magical rose. A prince, accompanied by a peasant boy and a flying carpet, aims to take the sorcerer down. Peter Cushing appears as the hermit, Wazir al-Wazara. Number 24, House of the Long Shadows, 1983. A campy horror comedy from Pete Walker that features fellow horror icons Vincent Price and John Carradine. The foursome play members of a strange family who reunite in an old Welsh manor, while a young novelist tries to write a novel of the caliber of Wuthering Heights in 24 hours around them. Cushing plays Sebastian Grisbane, while Lee plays Corrigan, a potential buyer of the property. So there you have it, all 24 films with Britain's gruesome twosome. Not only were they a dynamic pair on screen, but they were also great friends off screen. In the words of the immortal Christopher Lee, the pairing just worked.